Hey there folks, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a spooky story to share with you all. It's a tale of supernatural encounters in the historic and beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Grab your popcorn and settle in because this is going to give you goosebumps. Now before I get into the main event, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my future eerie adventures. In a quiet town by the Mississippi River, there was a darkness that nobody talked about. It was a place where strange things happened. People would go missing and their bodies were never found. The townsfolk whispered about a ghostly figure they called the River Reaper. They said he had long, bony fingers and sharp, cold eyes that glowed in the moonlight. No one ever saw him, but they knew he was out there. One night, a group of friends decided to take a moonlit boat ride on the Mississippi. The river shimmered in the pale light and they laughed and sang as they floated along. But as they ventured deeper into the dark waters, a chilling fog rolled in. It swallowed their boat and obscured their vision. The friends felt a presence, an eerie silence, as though the very river itself held its breath. Suddenly, a faint, ghostly whisper echoed in their ears. "I come for you," it said. Panic swept over them as they realized they were not alone on that boat. They paddled furiously to escape the fog, but the whisper grew louder, closer. They could feel cold fingers brush against their skin. The River Reaper was there with them, unseen but undeniably real. One by one, the friends disappeared into the inky water, their terrified cries silenced by the depths of the river. The next morning, the townsfolk found the empty boat adrift, a stark reminder of the horrors that lurked on the Mississippi. They called the police, but no trace of the missing friends was ever found. As more and more people went missing, the town descended into fear and paranoia. They knew the River Reaper was real and they dreaded the night. Doors were locked, windows bolted shut, and no one ventured near the river after sunset. In the heart of New Orleans, there's a place called the French Quarter where the streets get spooky when the sun goes down. People whisper about the murders that happened there long ago. I'm gonna tell you one of those stories, but be warned, it's gonna give you the chills. It all started on a dark and stormy night. The rain was pouring and thunder rumbled like a big, angry drum. A lady named Marie lived in a creepy old house on Royal Street. She was known for her magical powers and folks said she could talk to the spirits. Marie was a quiet woman with long, dark hair and a dress that flowed like a ghost. She had a secret room in her house where she kept all kinds of strange things like skulls and potions. Nobody knew what she did in there, but everyone was curious. One day, a group of young people from the neighborhood decided to sneak into Marie's house. They thought it would be fun to see her magic things. So, they crept in through a creaky back door. The house was cold and smelled of old, dusty books. They found the secret room and their eyes went wide with fear. It was filled with strange symbols and flickering candles. In the center of the room, there was a crystal ball and it started glowing on its own. Before they knew it, the room got colder and the candles flickered even more. The crystal ball showed them something horrifying. It was a shadowy figure holding a sharp knife. The figure's face was hidden and it whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Terrified, the young people tried to leave, but the door slammed shut. They were trapped. The shadowy figure appeared in front of them and one by one, it started to chase them. With every step, they could hear their own heartbeats getting louder and faster. The first one fell to the ground, the knife slicing through the air and then through flesh. The others ran, but they couldn't escape. One by one, they met the same fate, their screams echoing through the haunted house. The next morning, the rain had stopped and the sun was shining. The neighborhood was in shock when they discovered the gruesome scene in Marie's house. All the young people were gone and the room was filled with a strange, eerie silence. Marie had disappeared too, leaving behind only a note that said, "I warned you." The murders in the French Quarter were never solved and people still talk about them. Some say Marie's spirit lingers, seeking revenge on those who dare to enter her house. So, if you ever find yourself in the French Quarter of New Orleans on a dark and stormy night, be careful not to wander too close to Marie's old, spooky house, or you might become the next chapter in this chilling tale. I was walking home from school one dark and stormy afternoon. The rain was pouring hard and the wind was howling like a ghost. I hurried down the wet, slippery sidewalk, clutching my backpack tightly. As I turned a corner, I saw something strange lying on the ground. It was a little doll made of sticks and strange, dirty cloth. I picked it up and felt a sense of unease. The doll had a creepy face with tiny buttons for eyes and bits of string for hair. I didn't know what to do with it, so I put it in my backpack and continued walking home. The rain was getting heavier and I could hear thunder rumbling in the distance. The doll felt cold and eerie against my back. When I finally got home, I showed the doll to my little sister, Lily. She thought it was cool and wanted to play with it. I warned her that it might be weird, but she didn't listen. She grabbed the doll and started making it talk, pretending it was a friend. That night, strange things began happening. The lights flickered and the room felt colder. Lily couldn't sleep and kept having nightmares. She said the doll was talking to her in her dreams, whispering strange things. I was scared too, but I didn't want to admit it. I decided to hide the doll in the closet, hoping it would stop the strange happenings. But the next day, things got worse. My dog, Max, started barking at the closet and his hair stood on end. I opened the closet and the doll was gone. I searched the whole house, but I couldn't find it. That night, I had a horrible dream. I saw the doll and it was angry. It said it wanted revenge for taking it away from its home. I woke up in a cold sweat, but that wasn't the worst part. The next morning, Lily was acting even stranger. She was pale and weak and her voice sounded different. She told me the doll had possessed her and was controlling her actions. I was terrified. I knew I had to do something. I remembered hearing that voodoo dolls could be destroyed by fire. I grabbed the doll and ran to the backyard. I lit a match and set it on fire. As the flames consumed the doll, I heard a terrible scream and the wind seemed to howl louder than ever. When the fire died down, I went back inside and Lily seemed to snap out of the trance. She had no memory of what had happened. We both felt relieved, but I knew we'd never forget the horror of that voodoo doll. On a dark and misty night in the heart of New Orleans, a woman named Sarah found herself wandering down the infamous Bourbon Street. The street was alive with a strange mix of jazz music, laughter, and the occasional eerie whisper of the wind. Sarah had always been curious about the supernatural stories she'd heard about the city. As she strolled past a dimly lit voodoo shop, something peculiar caught her eye: a tarnished, antique mirror sitting on a rickety wooden table. Sarah couldn't resist the urge to peer into the mirror. She saw her reflection, but it wasn't an ordinary reflection. Her mirror self had a wicked grin on her face, and her eyes were filled with an unsettling crimson glow. The reflection seemed to be moving independently of her. Fear welled up inside her, and she tried to look away, but something kept her locked in the mirror's gaze. The mirror Sarah started to dance with an eerie grace, twirling and swaying in ways Sarah couldn't even fathom. The mirror's movements became more and more grotesque, like a marionette manipulated by an unseen puppeteer. As Sarah watched in horror, she realized that the mirror Sarah was chanting something in a language she couldn't understand. It sounded dark and ancient, a language from another realm. The eerie incantations filled the air, and the mirror Sarah's crimson eyes locked onto Sarah's with an evil intent. A sudden gust of wind blew through the narrow alley, extinguishing the nearby street lamp, casting the area into total darkness. Sarah was plunged into blackness, and the sinister chant echoed all around her. Panic overtook her, and she stumbled backward, trying to escape the clutches of the mirror. She collided with a stack of crates, sending them crashing to the ground with a deafening noise. The noise drew the attention of a group of revelers passing by. They laughed and jeered, oblivious to Sarah's terror. Desperate to break free, Sarah closed her eyes and screamed, willing the nightmare to end. The mirror shattered with a bone-chilling sound. When she opened her eyes, she was alone on the darkened street. The mirror was in pieces, and there was no trace of her eerie reflection. Breathing heavily, Sarah realized she had narrowly escaped a demonic force. She turned away from the shattered mirror and quickly made her way back to the bustling crowds of Bourbon Street. She could still hear the faint echoes of the mirror Sarah's chant, a haunting reminder of the supernatural encounter she had just narrowly survived. As she blended into the vibrant chaos of the night, Sarah couldn't help but wonder about the secrets that lurked in the shadows of New Orleans and the voodoo demon that had almost ensnared her soul on that eerie night on Bourbon Street. In the heart of New Orleans, a group of friends set out on an adventure one eerie night. They decided to visit St. Louis Cemetery, famous for its above-ground tombs and tales of the supernatural. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows as they entered the cemetery. The air was thick with humidity, and the crickets' eerie chorus added to the unsettling atmosphere. The friends, Jen, Mark, Lisa, and Mike, wandered among the rows of tombs. As they explored, Mark spotted an old, forgotten tombstone with strange symbols etched into it. Curiosity got the better of him and he traced the symbols with his finger. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing their flashlights. In the darkness, they heard a voice whispering in a language they couldn't understand. Jen begged, "Let's get out of here, this place gives me the creeps." But before they could leave, Mark collapsed to the ground, writhing in pain. His eyes turned pitch black and a sinister grin twisted his face. Lisa cried out in fear, "What's happening to Mark?" Mike, trembling, shouted, "It's like he's possessed or something." Mark's voice changed, deep and sinister, as he spoke, "I am the devil's vessel. This is my domain now." The friends were trapped, fear coursing through their veins as Mark's body contorted unnaturally. His head spun around and he stared at each of them with a malevolent gaze. Desperation took over Jen. She grabbed her flashlight and aimed it at Mark. The beam of light caused him to shriek in agony, his body contorting further. Lisa began to recite a prayer, clutching a small cross she wore around her neck. As she did, Mark's body convulsed, the dark presence recoiling in pain. Mike joined in, calling out for divine protection. The combined force of their prayers and the flashlight's beam weakened the evil force that had possessed Mark. The friends continued to pray and shine the light on Mark, inching closer to the exit of the cemetery. The demonic presence inside him fought back with all its might, but the friends' faith and determination were stronger. Finally, as they reached the cemetery gates, Mark's body collapsed to the ground. The darkness was expelled from him and his eyes returned to their normal state. He was weak and trembling, but he was himself again. Breathing heavily, they hurriedly left the cemetery, leaving behind the sinister tombstone and the chilling whispers that lingered in the night. They knew they had encountered something beyond their understanding, something evil. And that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel for more spooky content like this.